welcome to episode 5. It's the Scottish Highlands special. That's episode 5 of the Chief Wellbeing Officer podcast, renowned. Stephen and I were in the Highlands of Scotland, the very wintry Highlands of Scotland, mid-January. In fact, we're in the Highlands of Scotland on the 21st of January. January is typically, over the last 100 years, the coldest day every year throughout history. And once again, we were in deep snow. Cars were slithering off roads, and people were just surviving. I was there because I was celebrating my 50th birthday. So looking forward to moving into the second half of my life. And Stephen also happened to be ensconced up at the Glasgow School of Art's world famous Forres campus. And getting together in the Highlands was a very special moment. Deep snow and surrounded by lots of people from our past, and looking forwards to the future.
Yeah, it was a great trip, Rory. It was a great party. A ceilidh, Scottish traditional ceilidh with kilts and whiskey and all the rest of it. And it was good just to reflect on how special a place, Scotland in general, but particularly the Scottish Highlands. So it's interesting that the Glasgow School of Art, an institution that has been around since I think 1830, steeped in history. Charles Rennie Mackintosh designing the main building in Glasgow. But then making that move to build a campus in Forres near Inverness. And many people, and as we go through in this episode and some of the people that we've talked to, there's perhaps a belief that there's a compromise in being in a very remote area of a country, perhaps less infrastructure, maybe even less public services. But there's so many special things about that part of the world. And I think that was very much evident in the weekend that we were there for your party. And even think about your parents, Rory, right? I mean, they lived around the world, really did have experience of South America and the Antarctic and many wonderful places, but they chose to raise their family and live in the Scottish Highlands and near Aviemore. And I know it's a very special place for you. Why is that? What does it offer?
Well, the Cairngorms are a very special place. And even though the mountains aren't very high, they only go up to about, 1,500 meters. Scotland, of course, I don't know if you should say benefits from a maritime climate, but because we're an island and the north of Scotland is relatively far north, the weather is very difficult to predict and very changeable. And it's very windy. And so you get very much Arctic conditions. And people, climbers, and travelers from all over the world, they come just to be in the north of Scotland and experience polar conditions, even though they're still basically in Europe. It also means that it attracts a very special group of people around and about. We like to call them the geriactives. These are people my parents' age, they're in their high 80s. And on an average day in the winter, they'll be skiing, maybe skiing to the shops. When the ice melts, they'll be rowing and canoeing. They'll be up in the hills. My mother actually lives on an island, which is accessible only with a narrow causeway. And quite often when the snows melt, my mother's completely, the house is inaccessible. And she frequently swims. She swims away from the house in order to get to the shops, and she likes it to be inaccessible. She says it keeps away unwanted visitors. So I think it's a special place, but it attracts a very eclectic group of people, and not just Scots, a sort of multicultural, multi-ethnic group there up in the Spey Valley in Badenoch.
Yeah, and that's well-being right there, right? If you talk about, the quality of life, remaining active into your later years, we know the importance of, the physical for mental health and things like that. And even just remembering that weekend and just looking at the sky, that track we walked to get the bus to your party, and I remember looking up and just seeing the stars, right? And it's like it's a funny thing, but we're in many places around the world, but many cities which are affected by light pollution, and we may look at the sky and we may see a star or two, and in many cases it's a plane. So actually, I really remember that evening because looking up, it was just a multitude of stars, and it just really did take my breath away. And I don't think that happens very often these days, and especially later in life when you're so busy with work and family and all these things, just taking that pause. So I think even for that small reason, and that's a very distinct memory for me, and it's another example of it being a very special place.
I like the fact that when you're in Scotland, when you're in the north of Scotland in the Highlands in winter, the elements win. We've sort of designed ourselves to be isolated from the environment, and the only way to thrive in the north of Scotland or in that kind of topography and environment is to ally and have an alliance with nature rather than trying to isolate yourself from nature. You remember who you are. You remember how insignificant you are. You look up at the sky, the roads are blocked, it's cold, it's snowy, and you realize a good part of well-being is being present and remember where you are.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And even thinking when you're talking about the weather, especially in January, a lot of that is resilience, right? And just being out there and experiencing those conditions. A lot of people may think it's, even if you think we're in Barcelona today, there's been heavy rain in Barcelona and the whole city comes to almost a standstill. And people don't tend to go out, even in terms of athletics. If it's raining, you don't get so many people going out on the bike or running on the mountain here. Whereas if that was the case in Scotland, then no one would ever go out, right? So there's just an attitude there to just deal with the conditions. I think there's a bit more resilience in that. And I think you need to look at that positively rather than looking at it in a negative sense.
As I say in Scotland, there's never bad weather. There's just bad clothing.
Absolutely. So that's great, Rory. I mean, the main content of this podcast is talking to a number of people who were at the Glasgow School of Art Winter School in the Forest campus. You're talking about the diversity of people that usually converge in the Highlands, and that was certainly true of the Winter School. There was faculty and students from Germany, from Singapore, from France. We've got a number of conversations lined up which are very interesting, which look at this same theme on why the Scottish Highlands is a special place. And a lot of the focus on that week is on design and design thinking. There's a lot of design students there, but also business students who haven't previously been exposed to the design process. And I know that you're just back from Sao Paulo, Rory, and you were teaching design thinking to executives from Telefonica over there. So how did that go?
Well, first of all, it was very surreal to go from the windswept Arctic highlands of Scotland, arriving in Sao Paulo, 30-degree heat, midsummer, city getting prepared for carnival, street fairs, samba music, heat, monsoon rain in the afternoons. And I'd flown in from Scotland. I certainly had to adapt quick. We were running design thinking for executives. So we had to ensure that we had one day where we could give a deep dive, focused idea of what design thinking means and how it can help executives, and to assure executives that it was more than just about designing processes. It was something where we would help executives with their empathy again, with their presence, with their observation in the world, and how they can improve themselves, improve their processes, of course, but also improve themselves as leaders and empathize with clients. So it was a great week, and we were all out of our comfort zones actually, delivering this week together. But I think we made some big transformations.
That's a really interesting, Rory. And I think there's a great potential in design for management, design for leadership. And I think it's something that we're going to it's in the Chief Wellbeing Officer book, and it's something I'm sure that we'll have a lot of conversations over the course of this year. So here it is. This is episode 5. This is the Scottish Highlands special. Enjoy. So, Gordon, end of the first week of winter school, happy with how things are going?
Yeah, extremely. I mean, it's the largest winter school we've had. So we now have 4 schools coming: Glasgow, Cologne, Copenhagen, and now Audencia, Nantes in France. And each of those schools is exploring in a different way the way in which design plays a role in the creation of value in people's lives, whether that value be monetary or more than monetary. So it can be cultural, it can be aesthetic, it can be simply making people happier in the execution of something. And so at the midpoint, they've all been out, they've visited various sites around the Highlands, from Yllarramendy Abbey, the home of the Benedictine monks, through to ancient ruins and monuments, and they've been identifying ways in which next week they will come to communicate those through a short video presentation about the future heritage. So they're turning the present into a kind of resource for, turning the past into a resource for the present as it considers the future. So it's been a busy week, but I think we've enjoyed it and the students have enjoyed it. So yeah, perfectly happy with things so far.
It's a really good dynamic that I just observed yesterday, 120 students all working in different groups. And it really reminded me of my own, design education, design training. And I still teach aspects of design nowadays, but it's been a while since I've done designing. And for anyone who's not familiar with that, it's pretty unique and special to see again. People use their hands. It's very collaborative. It's noisy. It's visual. And computers are used, but they're by no means the primary tool. They're a supplemental tool to do some research. And I think there's a lot that non-designers can get from that type of approach, that more dynamic approach. So I know that a lot of the students that are here this week do have a design background and a design training, but not all, right? Yeah. So you have the Audencia students who are essentially management students. So, how have they found being immersed in the design process in this way?
Yeah, I mean, both the Audencia students and we have students here from Glasgow University with whom we teach also, who are also from the Management and Business School. And it's very much a sense of the capacity to experiment, to make things visual, to work collaboratively to an end that may not be predetermined, that actually that itself emerges through the process of collaboration, through the process of the synthesis of research and the visualization of the insights that emerge from that, which themselves can then be refined. So I think, without doubt, students who come from a non-design background find that a stretch, because it is a new skill set and a new application of the existing skills that they have, which they kind of blend with a design approach. But I think when they reach the other side of that, there is that they see that they have been expanded in their kind of competencies, that they have a newfound confidence in their ability to engage with people, to test an idea through engagement with users or stakeholders, to refine that idea through that process, so that we all say it's kind of quick and dirty, fail fast, fail cheap. But the idea is refined and improved before a further resource, whether that resource is just simply time and energy or whether it's money, is poured into it and turned into a product or a service on the other end. So I think they find it a stretch, but I think they find it very rewarding in as much as they see how the design augments the existing skill sets and the way of viewing the world that management and business schools provide.
Yeah. When you say stretch, it's as if it's like a rite of passage, right? Experiencing the design process. And there is that discomfort for any designer at the beginning of the process, particularly, and then you actually need to get through the other end to actually say, well, that discomfort is there for a reason, and you trust in the process. Yeah. And that's the value is there, right?
Absolutely. I mean, in a sense, I had the same issues myself. I'm a sociologist by training. So for me, I had a particular sort of methodological approach to the world prior to working in design and innovation. But again, it's that sense of And you can approach that with a certain curiosity, even a reluctance. And I can see that in some of the students when they first engage with the design process. Why do I need to do this? But then, and the only way to get through that and to acquire the confidence in oneself and in the process, as you say, is to go through it and to see what emerges on the other end, to see that actually working collaboratively, which the design process facilitates in a way that many processes do not, that you actually are able to call on the strengths of the group, which then expand or augment the strengths that you as an individual have. And you can see that you get to places that you would not otherwise get to. And you also see that the standard aversion to risk is reduced. And people have been able to try things and experiment. And from those experimentations, a confidence is required, and also an appreciation that actually failing is good, failing is useful, because it allows you to identify much more clearly where the value of your efforts lie. And when you come through that process, I think students definitely are emboldened. And I think that's great. I mean, as someone who works in education, to see people empowered to do things and to engage with other people in the application of those talents is fantastic. It's very rewarding. For the staff. Yeah.
Sure. More generally, so we're here at Scottish Highlands, officially Morayshire, malt whisky country, which is very attractive for many people around the world. And we're in a kind of special area. We have the Finhorn community just a couple of miles from here. And a lot of your work here is using the power of design and innovating for some of the constraints of this part of the country, which is a bit more remote, less population, perhaps less infrastructure, more of a squeeze in public services, perhaps. But I guess there's also a positive side as well. Many people from the UK move here. So for you as a designer and innovator, in the years that you've been working here, what is the value? What is the added value that you can get from this part of the country?
Well, there's two things. There's kind of value for us and hopefully the value that we bring. I mean, we're working here with Highlands and Islands Enterprise, so it's a fairly unique partnership with the Regional Enterprise Agency, who are committed to bringing not only economic wealth and regeneration to the area, but also kind of cultural regeneration, in order that the population who are living here are able to enjoy that quality of life that you mentioned, the fresh air, the good water, the internet speeds that are actually higher than those in central London.
The good water, of course, being important for the malt whisky.
It's very important. It's best for all things, and they also make good beer up here. But so there is a sort of quality of life that comes from, if you like, nature, and then there is a sense of, I guess, community that also comes from much not living in a city. There aren't very many cities up here, and what you've got up here are people who are quite widely dispersed. So there's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of landscape to enjoy. The Highlands and Islands of Scotland are 52% of the Scottish landmass, but they only have 11% of the population. So in that sense, there is quality of life, but there are also challenges that come with that. So how do you identify ways in which the challenges of living in the Highlands offer up opportunities both for the people who live here and for people in the central belt of Scotland? So one of the challenges that we had was, and we have a digital health institute based on the campus here in Forres. And that's funded by the Scottish Government, and it's the only innovation centre that's out with the Central Belt. One of the premises being, if healthcare can be mediated by digital technology here in the Highlands, it will work in cities, and the reverse isn't necessarily true. So in kind of design parlance, we're up here being extreme users. We're testing things in an environment that is perhaps more challenging than the everyday, but if it works here, it will be reverse engineerable back into other people's lives. I think the other thing we've been here is it's brought a certain awareness of how communities and indeed enterprises can make a request of an art school, because they now have an art school on their doorstep, and people are coming to us saying, so how do we approach the circular economy? Or how do we take an approach like creative clusters and apply it into our local area to start to create value for the citizens and stakeholders and the local enterprises that fund people's lives in this area. So it's a working process. We've been here for about 6 or 7 years now. We've been on the new campus for just over 1 year, and we're sort of bedding in now, but starting to extend ourselves from the Western Isles, the Hebrides, up to Orkney and Shetland. We've introduced things like innovation fellowships, where we identify small-scale enterprises who need design and who need that kind of creative space to think in a slightly different way that allows them to step back from simple, productive enterprise. So it's been a case of us being here, enjoying the quality of life that's here, but also enjoying the opportunity to input into that local economy and into kind of civil society here for the better.
So hi, Katrine. You're here with 12 students from Audencia Business School.
That's correct, yeah.
So what do they get from design? Why do you give them exposure to the design process?
Well, it's a good question because I think that, I believe management has got to rethink itself somehow. And I think that design probably can help us redesign somehow, I think, management. So what I'm hoping to get, and I know that I will get from being here in the Highlands and with Glasgow School of Art, we designed actually this program. The students are on a program which is called the Master in Management and Entrepreneurship in the Creative Economy, and we have designed this program together with Glasgow School of Art. So they get actually free design projects during their curriculum, which is more than any other management students would probably get. And what we get from that is that we are asking students to be thinking differently, thinking from a different perspective. Because obviously, as you know, the way we teach management, I think is still very traditional, and in terms of the delivery, for instance. If you look at the way design students are being taught, the studio culture, for instance, it's something that we would really like to take and make ours. So can you teach, for instance, management in a studio environment? That's a really interesting question for us. And also the way, students are being given projects with briefs. Again, that's not something which is very common for management students. So for them, it's also a new way of being taught and a new environment, a new teaching environment. What we get as well is that obviously being here in the Highlands with Glasgow School of Art and design students from Singapore, from Cologne, from Copenhagen, students from Audencia Business School are actually being surrounded by students who've got a design background. And so they can, and we have seen that during the first week already, but our students are being very much influenced by the way the design students are working, the way they present things, the way they do their research, for instance. And we have seen already our students evolving very quickly, seeing how design students are working. And what I've found really, really interesting and rich is the fact that the design students came to do some crits, with our students. And again, crits is not something that management students get. So the design students came and their perspective and their point of views were really rich and enriching what the management students were trying to do. So, I could go on and on about all the advantages of trying to mix the two traditions. And I guess what would be really nice in the second week is if our management students now could also bring something in a different angle to the design students. And I think design students would actually probably enjoy that.
And in a way, it's kind of preparing them for the future of work, right? So
Exactly.
they're going to graduate and, they've trained in a business school, but they're going to go out into the world where they'll be collaborating with different disciplines and designers. And as you say, the designers need to get the benefit and the different perspective from the management students also. From what you're saying, it seems that a lot of the students are assimilating the design experience very readily. Do you see discomfort initially? Do you see reluctance, or they just dive into something different? What is their experience in just that first exposure of design?
That's a very good question, because I think that, yes, we have seen discomfort. We have seen, questioning, why do we have to do that? Why do we do it like this? But, as I said, and that's what I like in this program, is that because they are going to get 3 design briefs, we can see that they are getting it somehow, as we grow, as we go along during the year. So the first design project they did with the Glasgow School of Art, I think there were lots of why on earth are we doing this and why are we doing it this way? Now we are, in the second project, so I think they understand the why. I think now is the processes which are they're questioning, but you can see that they are making progress because, some of the students said, oh, Catherine, is so good to be explaining our project again and again to so many different people, because the more we do it, the more it becomes clearer in our head. So I think they can understand now what the design students are doing and why they are doing it, and they're trying to make it theirs now. I think there are still lots of questions. There is still big discomfort. But obviously, what we always say to the students is, here you are in a very safe environment, so it's okay to feel discomfort. And in a way, probably it's a very traditional way of students to say things. Oh, I feel confused. And usually when they say I feel confused, it's like it's your fault. I'm feeling confused. Now students, our students are saying, oh, Catherine, I feel confused, but I feel happily confused. And that's a big progression. So even for us, if at the end of the year, even if our management students come to us and they say, I'm happy now with confusion, and we know that the world of work is all about confusion and chaos, and being able to be in that, funny space where you don't really know what's happening and lots of things are coming your way and you've got to manage them and balance them. I think if at the end, this year, the students say, I am happy with confusion, I think then we have done quite a good job.
So hi, Philippe. So what do you think of the Scottish Highlands? It's the first time that you're here at the Glasgow School of Art campus in Forest. So what's your experience so far?
What I experienced is a great environment for 2 things. And the first one, not the first time I was here, my first ever visiting UK was Inverness. And I should say also, as an artist, I was, for years, I have been in touch with artists coming out of the Glasgow School of Art, which has a very good reputation internationally. And I have close friends that came out from this, or friend of friends. And so I knew that image. I had this picture of Scotland and this part of Scotland being a place where things are really thought about in a very clever way about arts, but not only arts, because I was in a very specific field of arts when you are trying to develop what could be a relationship between arts and business, or let's say business in a way. And they were those people who were investigating those kind of areas, how you could perform installations or involve people into art works in a way or another that could change their way of being together or producing together. And that's for now, more than 15 years has been the case. So I had this picture that here things are happening on this way. And of course, it was also related to the old tradition, UK tradition of community art. We can even go back to arts and crafts movement, where there is the thinking about arts are here to change society or to do something with people in order to try to move society forward.
Yeah. So do you think that is one of the keys? Because, we're out of the urban centre, or the main urban centre of the country, and people may have a picture of what this region looks like, a bit more remote, compromised perhaps in terms of, even public services or things going on. But does it mean that people are more, collaborative? Can we get down to those societal
movements like, arts and crafts? I mean, is it something that we could be inspired by nature, perhaps, or what are some of the keys of just being out of the urban centre?
Well, that's a tricky question because I have no clue for that. It's really a mystery for me. I think, the remoteness is probably something very important. You find this in small countries like Denmark, even Switzerland, but remote because they are small, or isolated in a way or another. So I think remoteness is is a factor. Nature, probably. It's very new for me because it's not that sure that for 2 or 3 years now, I'm meeting again and again the fact that there is a relation between the relation to nature or a closeness to nature and an ability to rethink organizations. That's strange for me. I cannot develop on that. I could tell also, because this is very personal, I think that the climate, there is something that is pushing you to be in a way very active and very quiet at the same time. Something like this, and probably it has something to do. Weather can be tough, really tough here. It can be very boring. It is beautiful at the same time. But as if you have to deal with that, you have to be at the same level of efficiency and the same confusion and kind of equivalence. But that's really hypothetical. I won't tell anything for sure. But the fact also that there is a Finton community here, I just investigated to know more, is also very interesting because there is this conviction that in this part of the world, maybe things can be experimented differently. That is exactly what I met here in the campus. This new campus is, I was talking to them, it could be the new Black Mountain College. This is for me a place, or the new Bauhaus, a place where you don't know why it happens, but there is a convergence of different factors, and you have everything gathered in favor of maybe a new way of thinking and improving things and experimenting and a very, very high benevolence and openness and benevolence.